Hello everyone, my name is Valeria, and in this channel we talk about spirituality and esoteric topics. So, today I'm going to talk about Elohim, Seraphim, and Nephilim beings from a spiritual science perspective, not from a religious perspective. Okay? So I'm going to talk about these beings because these are names that we hear a lot, but sometimes it is not so clear what are these beings. So I just want to, you know, to to remind you that there's a space in my web page in which you can send your questions related with spiritual science and galactic beings. So I am going to be answering to these questions in future videos, and also some of my videos include free PDF so that you can read the PDF while you are watching to the video. Okay, so all of that information will be in the description box. I am just sharing this because I haven't actually, but yes, if you read the description box, I am always like upgrading information and so on. Okay, so Elohim and Seraphim beings, they are easier to explain as they come from the Emerald and the Gold Order respectively, but for Nephilim is different, so we are going to talk about this also. So when we talk about Elohim, so you have like the first manifestation of the source consciousness from the emerald blue flame, and this is the Emerald Order. These are the beings that on density on dimension 12 they were seated as these feline hominid beings, as Elohim beings, so these are the beings that we associate with Aramatina on Lyra also, so, and then these beings, they have expressions and different expressions on different on the different densities or dimensions. So here you have that the beings that were in the 4th and 5th density, which were meta-terrestrials, these beings, they were founders of these seedings on Earth, and they worked through Lyran beings that were on the 3rd density, and then Lyrans, they created a race of beings on the 3rd density also, and these beings were Elohim, so when we talk about the Elohim, these beings, they represent the Emerald Order, Aramatina, the founders, and if you talk about the Elohim more specifically, here we are talking about these beings that are in dimension 7, 8, and 9, and these beings, they will be of a etheric nature, like humanoids with feline traits. So then you have the Gold Order, and these beings are seated on dimension 10 on Vega, on Lyra, and these beings are usually birds like the bird people. They are sometimes also insects, even reptiles, but it's mostly birds like bird people, and they are on the Stargate number 10. Also, they are protecting this Stargate. So these beings, they, on Vega, these beings are the Seraphine beings. And again, these beings are part of the founder beings, and yes, they are known as bird people sometimes. And then you have a part of the Gold Order that were mostly reptile beings, on the 10 dimension, and these beings started to digress, and they wanted to dominate other systems on our system of dimensions. So these beings, they became known as fallen seraphim, and these beings are like the forefathers of the fallen angelic beings, from Orion and Draco. So again, when we talk about seraphim beings, it's more when they are on the third density, which is again dimension 7, 8, and 9, and these beings are again more like humanoids in a way, but with more of a etheric nature and with bird features. Okay, so then we have the Nephilim. So to understand who the Nephilim are, we need to understand that there was a hybrid type of beings that were a emerald order and amethyst order hybrid. And I will make maybe a video about the orders, but you have in this stream of spiritual science, you have the emerald, gold and amethyst. So this being was a hybrid between the emerald and the amethyst, and was a feline aquatic ape being, and these kind of beings, they were also founders of this system of dimensions. They were called Anju. So this emerald order and amethyst order hybrid feline aquatic ape being, they were from Lyra. They were at the 11th dimension, and they were from Abidjan on Lyra or Chiliac. And so these beings, again, a part of these beings, they began to digress, and they asked to the Elohim feline beings to destroy the fallen seraphim, So here you have the Gold Order seraphim beings, that some of them were falling and were like fallen angels, and then you have the beings, Anju beings, that a part of them also started to digress, and they they were like, like, why these beings from Vega, again, just some beings from Vega, but why these beings from Vega are being so, like, service to self. We need to destroy them. So these beings, asked for that to the Elohim, and the Elohim said no. So here the Anju beings, they began their own quest of this dominion with the intention of destroying all beings, all races but their own, and they wanted dominion over our system of dimensions, so then they, in their rebellion against the founder beings, these beings from the 11th dimension, they adopted the name of Anu, and they became known as the Anu Elohim fallen angelic beings, So these beings, they are the forefathers of the Anunnaki beings, And so these Anu Elohim fallen angelic beings, they created the Anunnaki race, the Syrian Anunnaki race, in order for these beings to destroy actually the beings that the founders were, seeding in a way. So here, there were a lot of conflicts between the Seraphim and the Anu Elohim fallen beings. So this was happening on Lyra, and our system of dimensions was nearly destroyed because of that. So the Seraphim beings and the Anu Elohim beings, they were at war as some of the Seraphim beings, they were digressing, and the other beings, they wanted for the Elohim to destroy the fallen Seraphim. So the Elohim, as I said before, they said no, and instead they tried to help the other beings with, DNA, with DNA, DNA bioregenesis and so on. So this period was known as the Angelic Wars, and again this began in the Lyran system at density number 4, and this is really old, really ancient, like 250 billion of years ago. And if you want to imagine this, imagine that this was wars between Anu Elohim beings that were like aquatic apes, also bipedal dolphins, like this kind of, of course they are on higher densities, but if you were to imagine them, if they were to project themselves so we can see them, so this is what you will see probably. And then you had fallen Seraphim, and these fallen Seraphim, they were mostly insects and some dino beings also. Okay, so I am sharing so that maybe you can imagine more of what I am saying. Okay, so then the guardian founders, they were seeding beings on earth in a way. And so the Anu Elohim beings, these fallen beings, they created a new fallen angelic race of beings. This is important. These beings that they created, they had 11 strand DNA potential, so this was like the most advanced biological form that they were able to create actually. So these new beings that were created by the Anu Elohim, they were called Anunnaki, and this name meant like avengers of the Anju, the first beings, the beings of the Amethyst order that started to digress, and so this Anunnaki lineage was created as a vehicle so that the Anu Elohim beings from the 11th dimension, so that they could incarnate, on the other densities, on the first, second, and third density, because remember that if you have certain DNA strand potential, you need a body that is a match for that. So they wanted to use these Anunnaki beings, these bodies in a way, in order to, to work from the earth for this exploitation of earth, of humanity, and even other star systems on this system of 15 dimensions. So then if we focus on the second seeding on earth, here the Anunnaki, they proceeded to bring forth a new race of human and Anunnaki beings. This was a hybrid, and these beings were called Nephilim. So these beings were created with humans that were specifically from like Atlantis, but not Atlantis, like Atlantis in the previous seedings. But so you can understand, it was this Atlantean frequency, a bit more masculine, maybe, more into technology. So with that, I want to say that, it was in a way a really advanced genetic code, actually. So these beings, they were called Nephilim, and, they started to dominate other beings, like other humans, and they started to create this really materialistic culture in the civilization. These are the Nephilim beings that we sometimes hear about, that they started to do like really weird stuff, like like these genetic experiments, really distorting the genetics of humans, like interbreeding with animals, and so on, and probably also in a way also interacting with beings from Lemuria, which again is like previous Lemuria, but it's the energy, the feminine energy. Here is when people talk about the Nephilim, intercoursing with female beings, from with more of this feminine energy. So this is not just like on a literal way, that Nephilim beings, maybe men, they were, procreating with female beings from Lemuria. It wasn't just that, but it was also that the masculine energy started to really force the feminine energy. So, here is where Lemuria, which again is past Lemuria, but this is where Lemuria started to be, attacked in a way under real danger because of a more masculine energy that wanted to conquer and to expand and to have more technology and to create weird experiments and so on. So here the feminine energy started to feel powerless, So here is this is another way of understanding the Nephilim myth, So yes, these Nephilim beings, they also were involved in a way in the 1,000 years war, and yes, this is what I want to share about that. So so if you read about the Nephilim in other texts, maybe it's going to be a slightly different explanation, but I believe the point, like the core point, is more or less the same, And so yes, these beings have been interacting, the Elohim with the Nephilim, but also the Nephilim with the Seraphim, So this is why these names are even kind of similar. This is so interesting, and this is why I was actually motivated to really do more research about the Nephilim to really understand them. Yes, so if you want to know if you have been maybe incarnated as a Elohim, Seraphim, or even Nephilim being, you can have a Akashic reading with me, also a galactic astrology reading. So yes, please let me know if you enjoyed this video, and remember to subscribe to this channel, and thank you so much for watching.